The drop pod screamed through the atmosphere of Kelvax Prime, its hull glowing orange from the heat. Inside, Sergeant Marcus Cole gripped his rifle and counted the seconds until impact. Around him, 11 other Marines sat in silence. They had done this many times before. They knew what waited for them on the surface. The Dominion had conquered this world 3 years ago. The native Kelvari people had been slaves ever since. Earth's Galactic Council had received distress signals for months. Now, finally, the response had come. The pod hit the ground hard. The doors blew open. Marcus was the first one out, his boots crunching on the rocky soil. The air smelled like smoke and something else, something that made his stomach turn. He had smelled it before on other worlds. It was the smell of suffering. "Fan out," he ordered through his helmet comm. "Secure the perimeter, watch for hostiles." The Marines moved like water, flowing into defensive positions around a cluster of low buildings. This was a labor camp. Intelligence said 3,000 Kelvari were being held here. Their job was to free them. Corporal Sarah Chen was the first to spot movement. "Contact left, looks like. Civilians, sir." Marcus turned and saw them. A group of Kelvari huddled behind a broken wall. They were thin, almost skeletal. Their blue skin had turned gray from malnutrition. Their large eyes watched the humans with terror. "Hold fire," Marcus said. He lowered his rifle and raised his empty hands. "We're here to help. We're here to free you." The Kelvari did not move. They had heard lies before. The Dominion had taught them that all outsiders were enemies, that humans were violent primitives who ate other species. Marcus knelt down, making himself smaller, less threatening. He reached into his pack and pulled out a ration bar. He set it on the ground and pushed it toward them. "Food," he said simply, "for you." An elder Kelvari crept forward. His legs trembled with each step. He picked up the bar and sniffed it. Then he took a small bite. His eyes went wide. "It is sweet," he whispered. "Give it to the children first," Marcus said. The elder stared at him. In his culture, the strong ate first. The weak waited. But this human soldier wanted the children to have food before the adults. It did not make sense. More Kelvari emerged from hiding. There were dozens of them, then hundreds. The Marines handed out ration bars, water packets, and emergency blankets. Private First Class James Rodriguez knelt beside a young Kelvari child whose leg was badly wounded. "Hey, little guy," James said softly. "Let me look at that leg, okay?" The child's mother watched with wide eyes as James cleaned the wound and applied a healing patch. The technology would repair the damage within hours. The mother began to cry. "Why?" she asked. "Why do you help us? You are soldiers, you kill. That is what soldiers do." James looked up at her. "Ma'am, we are soldiers, but we're not here to kill. We're here to save people like you and your son." The mother did not understand. In her experience, the strong conquered the weak. That was the natural order. Mercy was weakness. Compassion was foolish. The Dominion had taught her this every day for 3 years. A warning tone sounded in Marcus's helmet. Movement detected. Multiple contacts approaching from the north. Looks like Dominion patrol. Marcus stood up. "All units, defensive positions. Protect the civilians." The Marines formed a line between the Kelvari and the approaching threat. 20 Dominion soldiers appeared over a ridge. They were tall, heavily armored, and they carried plasma weapons that could burn through steel. The Dominion commander stepped forward. He was a Vordak, one of the species that ruled the Dominion. His 4 eyes scanned the scene before him. "Humans," he said with disgust, "you are trespassing on Dominion territory. Surrender now and you will be given quick deaths." Marcus didn't flinch. "This is not Dominion territory anymore. By order of the Galactic Council, these people are under our protection. Leave now or face the consequences." The Vordak laughed. It was a harsh, ugly sound. "Protection. Humans protecting Kelvari. Why would you risk your lives for slaves?" "They're not slaves," Marcus replied. "They're people, and we don't abandon people." The Vordak raised his weapon. "Then you will die with them." The battle was brief but intense. Plasma bolts filled the air. The Marines moved with precision, using cover and coordinated fire. They had trained for years for moments like this. The Dominion soldiers were brutal, but they fought as individuals. The Marines fought as a team. When the smoke cleared, 15 Dominion soldiers lay dead. 5 had surrendered. Not a single Marine had fallen. More importantly, not a single Kelvari had been hurt. The captured Dominion soldiers knelt on the ground, their hands bound. They expected execution. That was what they would have done. That was what any sensible conqueror would do. Marcus approached them. "You will be held as prisoners of war. You will be treated according to human military law. You will receive food, water, and medical care. When this conflict ends, you will be returned to your people." One of the prisoners, a young Vordak barely old enough to fight, looked up at him. You will not kill us." "No." "Why?" Marcus thought about the question. It was the same question the Kelvari mother had asked. Why show mercy? Why show compassion? In a galaxy where strength was everything, why would anyone choose kindness? "Because that's not who we are," he finally said. "We fight wars, but we don't lose ourselves in them. When we forget our humanity, we become just like the enemy. And then what's the point of winning?" The young Vordak did not respond. He could not understand, but something in his eyes had changed. A small seed of doubt had been planted. Marcus assigned 2 Marines to guard the prisoners and turned his attention back to the liberated Kelvari. There were thousands of them now, emerging from barracks and work sites across the camp. They moved slowly, afraid to believe that their nightmare was ending. Corporal Chen approached him. "Sir, we've secured the main administration building. Found records of all the slaves held here. Names, families, home villages. We can start reunification immediately." "Do it," Marcus said, "and set up a triage station. The camp medic says there are serious cases that need attention." The next few hours were a blur of activity. Marines distributed supplies, treated wounds, and began the slow process of reuniting families that had been separated. The Kelvari watched with wonder as these armored soldiers, these warriors who had just defeated the Dominion in battle, now knelt beside crying children and helped elderly aliens walk to shelter. One Marine, Private Thompson, discovered a group of Kelvari children who had been orphaned when their parents died in the mines. The children had no one left. They sat huddled together, hollow-eyed and silent. Thompson sat down with them. He didn't say anything at first. He just sat there, letting them know he wasn't going anywhere. After a while, he pulled out a small device and showed them pictures. Pictures of Earth, blue oceans, green forests, mountains covered in snow. "This is my home," he said softly. "It's far away, but it's beautiful." One of the children, a little girl no more than 5 years old, pointed at the ocean. "What is that?" "Water, lots and lots of water, so much that you can't see the other side." The children gasped. On their dry world, water was precious. The idea of so much that it stretched to the horizon was almost impossible to imagine. "Someday," Thompson said, "when things are better, maybe you can visit. Maybe you can swim in that water. Would you like that?" The little girl nodded, and for the first time in months she smiled. These were the moments that made the fight worthwhile. Not the victories in battle, but the quiet victories of hope. Every smile recovered from despair was a triumph. Every child who learned to trust again was a battle won against the darkness. By nightfall, the camp was transformed. Cooking fires burned where guard towers had stood. Kelvari families sat together, eating their first real meals in years. The sound of crying still filled the air, but now it was mixed with laughter, with reunion, with the beginning of healing. More drop pods were landing across the planet. More Marines were freeing more camps. The liberation of Kelvax Prime had begun. It would take weeks to clear the Dominion forces from the entire world. It would take months to help the Kelvari recover from years of slavery. But it would happen. Because that was what humans did. They fought for those who could not fight for themselves. They showed mercy to the defeated. They rebuilt what others had destroyed. And in a galaxy that had forgotten kindness, that made them the most terrifying force of all. 3 weeks later, the capital city of Kelvax Prime was finally free. The Dominion flag had been torn down from the governor's palace. In its place flew 2 flags side by side, the flag of the Kelvari people and the flag of the United Earth Forces. Colonel Diana Park stood on the palace steps and watched her troops organizing relief supplies. Transport ships were landing every hour, bringing food, medicine, and construction materials. The Kelvari were no longer hiding. They walked freely through their own streets for the first time in 3 years. An aide approached her with a tablet. "Colonel, we have a situation. The Dominion High Command has sent a representative. They want to negotiate a ceasefire." Diana raised an eyebrow. "That's unusual. They don't normally negotiate." "I know, ma'am, but apparently our tactics have them confused." Diana smiled slightly. She had heard this before. Other species didn't know what to make of human warfare. Humans killed when necessary but stopped when they could. They conquered but then helped rebuild. They defeated enemies but then treated them with dignity. "Send them in," she said. The Dominion representative was an old Vordak named Sovereign Krath. He had gray scales and walked with a cane. His uniform was covered in medals from 100 conquered worlds. He had never lost a war, until now. "Colonel Park," he said formally, "I have come to discuss terms." "Terms of surrender?" Diana asked. "Terms of understanding." He paused, clearly uncomfortable. "Your forces have taken 7 Dominion worlds in the past 6 months. You have freed millions of slaves. You have defeated our armies. And yet you have not destroyed us. Your prisoners return to us healthy and unharmed. Your occupation forces help rebuild instead of exploit. Your soldiers protect civilians instead of punishing them." His 4 eyes narrowed. "Why? What game are you playing?" Diana gestured for him to follow her. They walked through the palace, now being converted into a hospital and refugee center. Everywhere, human soldiers worked alongside Kelvari civilians. Marines were helping to distribute food. Engineers were repairing damaged buildings. Medics were treating the sick and wounded. "Do you see any game here?" Diana asked. Krath watched a young Marine reading a story to a group of Kelvari children. They were laughing. Some of them were sitting in his lap. The Marine was using funny voices for different characters. "This makes no sense," Krath said slowly. "War is about dominance. The strong take from the weak. The winner claims the spoils. That is the natural order." "Maybe," Diana said. "Or maybe the natural order is whatever we choose it to be. Humans spent thousands of years learning the hard way that cruelty breeds cruelty, that conquest creates resentment, that empires built on suffering always collapse. But you have an empire. You control dozens of worlds." "We have allies," Diana corrected. "We have friends. The species that join us do so freely. They stay because they want to, because we treat them fairly, because we help them grow." Krath shook his head. "This is weakness disguised as strength. Eventually, someone will exploit your kindness." "Many have tried. None have succeeded." Diana stopped walking and faced him directly. "Sovereign Krath, the Dominion has 2 choices. You can continue fighting us. We will continue freeing your slaves. We will continue defeating your armies. And we will continue treating your captured soldiers with the same mercy we show everyone. Lord. Or you can change. You can release your slaves voluntarily. You can join the Galactic Council as equals instead of conquerors. You can become part of something bigger than yourselves." Krath was silent for a long moment. His entire worldview was being challenged. Everything he had ever believed about power and strength was being questioned. "I cannot make such a decision alone," he finally said. "I must consult with the High Command." "Take your time," Diana said. "But while you decide, we will keep liberating your conquered worlds. We will keep showing mercy to your soldiers. And eventually, your people will start to wonder if maybe there's a better way." Krath studied her face, looking for deception, for hidden motives. He found none. This human truly believed what she was saying. She truly thought that kindness could change the galaxy. "You are either the wisest being I have ever met," he said slowly, "or the most foolish. I genuinely cannot tell which." Diana smiled. "Most humans would say the same thing. We've been arguing about it among ourselves for thousands of years." "And what do you believe?" "I believe that the worst thing we can do is stop trying. Even if kindness fails sometimes, even if mercy is sometimes abused, the alternative is worse. A galaxy without compassion is not a galaxy worth living in." Krath left the planet that day. He did not have an answer, but he had seen something that he could not unsee. He had witnessed a power that did not need to crush others to feel strong. And deep in his ancient heart, a small voice whispered that maybe the humans were right. Maybe kindness was not weakness. Maybe compassion was not foolish. Maybe the universe could be different. It was a dangerous thought, and dangerous thoughts have a way of spreading. As his shuttle lifted off from the surface, Krath looked down at the world below. Humans and Kelvari moved together through the streets. Buildings were being repaired. Fields were being planted. Life was returning to a world that had known only death for 3 years. And for the first time in his long career, Sovereign Krath wondered if he had been fighting on the wrong side. On the far side of the galaxy, in the dark halls of the Dominion High Command, Sovereign Krath delivered his report. The other sovereigns listened in silence. When he finished, there was a long pause. "You are saying," Sovereign Mala said slowly, "that these humans defeated our forces, freed our slaves, and then helped them." "Yes." "And they showed mercy to our captured soldiers." "Yes." "And they offered us peace." "Yes." The sovereigns looked at each other. In their entire history, they had never encountered anything like this. The universe was supposed to be simple. The strong dominated the weak. That was the only rule that mattered. "Clearly," Sovereign Vex said, "this is some kind of trap. They are trying to lull us into a false sense of security. Then they will strike when we are unprepared." "Perhaps," Krath said, "but I walked among them, I watched them. They truly believe in their compassion. It is not an act." "Then they are fools," Vex snapped, "and fools are easy to defeat." "We have been trying to defeat them for 6 months. We have lost 7 worlds. Our soldiers speak of them with respect." Krath lowered his voice. "Some even speak of them with admiration." The room fell silent. That was the real danger. Not that humans were strong, but that their ideas were spreading. Dominion soldiers who had been treated kindly were returning home with strange thoughts. They were questioning the old ways. They were wondering if perhaps there was another path. "We must crush them completely," Vex declared. "We must show the galaxy that mercy is weakness. We must make an example of these humans." "And how do you propose we do that?" Sovereign Mala asked. "Our armies cannot stop them. Our ships cannot outrun them. Every battle costs us more than we gain." "Then we must strike at their heart," Vex said. "We must attack Earth itself. We must destroy their homeworld and scatter their people. Only then will the galaxy see that kindness cannot protect them." The sovereigns debated through the night. In the end, they voted. The decision was made. The Dominion would launch its largest fleet ever assembled. They would break through human defenses. They would burn Earth to ashes. And in doing so, they would learn a lesson that countless others had learned before them. Never underestimate humanity. Admiral Chen Wei stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched the tactical display. 300 Dominion warships were approaching Earth's outer defense perimeter. It was the largest hostile fleet ever recorded. "All stations report ready, Admiral," his aide said. "Good, signal the fleet. Hold the line. No ship breaks formation without my direct order." The human fleet was smaller, only 150 ships, but they had something the Dominion didn't. They had something to protect, something to fight for, something beyond mere conquest. Wei touched a photo taped to his command console. It showed his daughter, 10 years old, smiling on a beach. She was back on Earth, probably asleep, probably dreaming of normal childhood things. She didn't know that the fate of her world hung in the balance. "For her," he whispered, "for all of them." The battle began with a roar that could not be heard in the vacuum of space, but could be felt in the bones of every person watching. Plasma fire and missiles crisscrossed the darkness. Ships exploded like new stars being born and dying in the same instant. The Dominion fought with desperation. They had committed everything to this attack. If they failed here, their empire would crumble. Their conquered peoples would rise up. Their entire way of life would end. But the humans fought with something stronger than desperation. They fought with love. They fought to protect their families, their friends, their home. They fought knowing that if they fell, everything they cared about would be destroyed, and that made them invincible. After 18 hours, it was over. 200 Dominion ships floated dead in space. The rest were retreating as fast as their damaged engines could carry them. 60 human ships had been lost, their crews gone forever, but Earth still stood. Earth still spun beneath them, blue and beautiful and alive. Admiral Wei slumped in his chair. He was exhausted beyond words, but there was one more thing he had to do. "Open a channel to the retreating Dominion fleet," he ordered. His aide looked surprised. "Sir." "Do it." A moment later, the connection was made. Wei took a deep breath and spoke. "Dominion forces, this is Admiral Chen Wei of the United Earth Forces. Your attack has failed. Your fleet is broken. By the rules of war, I could pursue and destroy you. I could hunt down every survivor and eliminate them." He paused. "But I won't. Today you learned that you cannot defeat us through force. Perhaps someday you will learn that you cannot defeat our compassion either. Go home. Tell your leaders what happened here. Tell them that mercy is not weakness. Tell them that kindness is not foolish. And tell them that whenever they are ready to try a different way, we will be waiting." He cut the transmission. His aide stared at him. "Sir, they just tried to destroy our homeworld. They killed thousands of our people, and you're letting them go." Wei looked at the photo of his daughter. "Yes, because that's who we are, and if we become like them, then they've won after all, even in defeat." The aide shook his head slowly. "I don't understand. I want to, but I don't." "You will," Wei said. "Someday, you'll see someone you defeated become an ally. You'll see an enemy become a friend. And you'll understand that the war we're really fighting isn't against the Dominion. It's against the idea that cruelty is the only way." Outside the viewports, the Dominion fleet limped away. Many of those ships would never make it home. Their crews would die in the cold darkness between stars, but some would survive. Some would return to the Dominion and tell stories of humans who had shown mercy when they had every reason not to. Those stories would spread. They would grow. They would plant seeds in minds that had been taught to believe only in power. And in time, those seeds would bloom. The battle for Earth was over, but the real war, the war for the soul of the galaxy, was just beginning, and humanity would fight it the only way they knew how. With courage, with strength, and with a mercy that their enemies could not comprehend. Back on Earth, people emerged from shelters and looked up at the sky. They saw the fatting trails of battle, the distant sparks of damaged ships retreating. They knew how close they had come to losing everything. But they also knew something else. They knew that their sons and daughters, their mothers and fathers, had defended them. and they knew that those defenders had done it without becoming monsters. They had held onto their humanity even in the darkest hour. Churches and temples across the planet held services of thanksgiving, not just for survival but for something more important, for the preservation of their values, for the proof that kindness could survive even in war. In a small apartment in Tokyo, a grandmother held her grandson and told him the story of what had happened. "Remember this," she said. "Remember that we can be strong without being cruel. Remember that mercy takes more courage than revenge. That is what it means to be human." The boy nodded, not fully understanding, but he would remember. He would carry that lesson with him for the rest of his life, and someday he would pass it on to his own grandchildren. This was how humanity survived, not just in the physical sense, but in the spiritual sense, by passing down values from generation to generation, by refusing to let darkness consume them, by believing, always believing, that a better future was possible. 6 months after the Battle of Earth, the galaxy had changed. Word had spread about what the humans had done, how they had won and then shown mercy, how they had freed slaves and helped them rebuild, how they had treated prisoners with dignity. Species that had once feared humanity now looked at them with curiosity. Species that had been conquered by the Dominion began to hope, and within the Dominion itself, cracks were beginning to show. On a small moon called Varda 7, a secret meeting was taking place. 12 Dominion officers had gathered in a hidden bunker. They were all veterans of the human campaigns. They had all been captured at some point. They had all been released. And they had all been changed. "We cannot continue serving an empire built on cruelty," one of them said. His name was Subcommander Tarn, and he had spent 6 weeks as a human prisoner. During that time, he had been fed, healed, and treated with respect. A human doctor had saved his life when his wounds became infected. That doctor had not asked for anything in return. "What choice do we have?" another asked. "If we rebel, we will be executed. If we stay, we will destroy our own souls." Tarn stood up. "I have seen another way. The humans showed it to me. They are strong, stronger than us in many ways, but they choose to be kind. They choose to help instead of harm, and their worlds are happier for it." "You sound like you admire them." "I do." Tarn did not hesitate. "And I am not ashamed of it. They are what we could be if we had the courage to change." The meeting went late into the night. By the time it ended, a decision had been made. These 12 officers would begin working from within to change the Dominion. They would spread new ideas. They would question old assumptions. They would plant seeds of compassion in an empire built on conquest. It was dangerous work. Many of them would be discovered and executed in the years to come, but others would take their place, because ideas, once born, cannot easily be killed, and the idea that mercy could be strength was spreading through the Dominion like a slow fire. Meanwhile, on Kelvax Prime, the reconstruction was nearly complete. New schools had opened. New hospitals had been built. The Kelvari people were healing, not just their bodies but their spirits. Sergeant Marcus Cole had been stationed there for the past 6 months, helping with security and training local peacekeepers. He walked through the market square and nodded at familiar faces. The Kelvari no longer feared human soldiers. Many had become friends. A young Kelvari boy ran up to him. It was the same child that Private Rodriguez had treated on Liberation Day. His leg had healed perfectly. He now followed Marcus everywhere, asking questions about humans and their strange ways. Sergeant Cole," the boy tugged at his sleeve. "Is it true that humans have a holiday where they give presents to everyone?" Marcus smiled. "We have several actually. Why do you ask?" "My teacher said that generosity is a sign of weakness, that giving things away makes you poor." The boy looked confused. "But humans are not weak, and your worlds are not poor." Marcus knelt down to look the boy in the eye. "Do you know what makes a person rich?" "Having lots of things." No, having people who care about you, having friends, having family, things can be taken away, but love, kindness, the connections we make with others, those stay with us forever. Marcus put a hand on the boy's shoulder. When we give to others, we don't become poorer. We become richer because we've made another friend, built another connection. The boy thought about this. It was very different from what he had been taught under Dominion rule, but it felt right. It felt true. I want to be like humans when I grow up, he said quietly. No, Marcus said gently. Be like yourself. Be the best Kelvari you can be. But maybe, if you want, you can take some human ideas with you. Kindness, compassion, the belief that we're all in this together. The boy nodded solemnly. Then he ran off to play with his friends, laughing in a way that would have been impossible just a year ago. Marcus watched him go and felt something warm in his chest. This was why they fought, not for territory, not for power, but for moments like this, for children who could laugh again, for hope. His communicator beeped. Sergeant Cole, you're needed at the command center. We have a situation. Marcus sighed and started walking. The work was never done, but that was okay. There was always more good to do in the galaxy, and humans would keep doing it, one world at a time. At the command center, Marcus found Colonel Park waiting for him. She looked serious but not alarmed. We've received a message from the Dominion High Command, she said. They want to negotiate. Again, they've been stalling for months. This time is different. They've requested a summit. All the sovereigns will attend. They want to discuss. She paused as if she couldn't quite believe what she was about to say. They want to discuss the possibility of releasing their remaining slaves. Marcus stared at her, seriously. Seriously, it seems our methods are having an effect. The younger generation in the Dominion is questioning their leaders. There have been protests, refusals to serve. Some military units have outright mutinied. The power of a good example, Marcus said softly. Something like that. Earth Command wants us to provide security for the summit. They specifically requested you and your team. My team, we're just ground pounders. You're the team that liberated this world. You're the team that's been working with the Kelvari for 6 months. You represent everything we want the Dominion to see. Park smiled slightly. Apparently, stories about you have spread. The Kelvari talk about the human soldiers who showed them kindness. The Dominion soldiers who were captured talk about the humans who healed their wounds. Your faces might as well be on a poster. Marcus felt uncomfortable. He wasn't a symbol. He was just a soldier doing his job. But if that job now included being a walking advertisement for human values, so be it. When do we leave? Tomorrow. The summit will be held on a neutral station in the border zone. Both sides are sending delegations. This could be the beginning of the end, Sergeant, or the beginning of a new beginning. Marcus nodded and went to tell his team. They had fought many battles together. Now they were going to fight a different kind of battle, one without weapons. But in some ways, it would be the most important battle of all. Because wars can be won with guns, but peace can only be won with understanding, and humanity was ready to offer both. The neutral station floated in empty space, far from any planet or star. It had been built centuries ago by a species long forgotten, a place where enemies could meet without fear of ambush. Now it would host the most important negotiation in galactic history. Marcus and his team arrived a day early to secure the perimeter. The station was vast and empty, full of echoing corridors and dusty chambers. But soon it would be filled with diplomats, leaders, and perhaps, if they were lucky, hope. The Dominion delegation arrived first. Sovereign Krath led them, walking slowly with his cane. Behind him came a dozen other officials, including some faces Marcus recognized from the battlefield. They looked tired. They looked uncertain. They looked like people whose world was changing faster than they could understand. The human delegation arrived next, representatives from Earth and all the allied worlds, scientists, diplomats, soldiers. They came together in the grand chamber at the center of the station, sitting across from each other at a long table. And then the talking began. It went on for days. There were arguments. There were accusations. There were moments when it seemed like everything would collapse and the war would continue forever. But there were also moments of connection. A Dominion officer admitting that he had doubted their cause ever since a human medic saved his life. A human diplomat sharing stories of worlds that had joined the alliance voluntarily and prospered. A Kelvari representative speaking quietly about the horrors of slavery and the joy of freedom. On the third day, Sovereign Krath asked to speak to Marcus privately. They met in a small observation room overlooking the stars. "I have been thinking about our first conversation," Krath said. "On Kelvax Prime, you asked me what game I was playing, and I told you that your compassion made no sense." "I remember," Marcus said. "I have watched your people for many months now. I have studied your history. I have tried to understand how a species could become what you are." Krath turned to face him. "Your past is full of cruelty. Your ancestors committed terrible acts against each other. You had slavery. You had conquest. You had genocide." Marcus nodded slowly. "Yes, we did. And yet you changed. Somehow, despite all of that, you became this. Soldiers who heal, warriors who show mercy, conquerors who free instead of enslave." Krath's voice was quiet, almost wondering. How did you do it?" Marcus thought for a long moment before answering. "We didn't do it all at once. It took thousands of years, millions of people fighting for what was right, often losing, sometimes dying. Progress came in small steps. Sometimes we went backwards. Sometimes it felt like we would never change. But you did." "Yes, because there were always people who refused to give up, people who believed that we could be better, people who looked at the darkness in our history and said, 'Never again.'" Marcus looked out at the stars. "And eventually, enough of us believed it that it became true." Krath was silent for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. "My people have ruled for 10,000 years. We have never known anything but conquest. We have never believed anything but that power is all that matters. It's not too late to change. I am old. I have done terrible things, things I cannot undo. Then make sure the next generation does better." Marcus put a hand on the old sovereign's shoulder. "That's all any of us can do. Plant seeds, teach the young, hope that someday the garden will bloom." Krath looked at the human soldier's hand on his shoulder. Such a simple gesture, such a human thing to do. In the Dominion, touching was reserved for combat or dominance, but this touch offered neither threat nor submission. It offered only connection. "You are a strange species," Krath said finally, "but I think perhaps you are what we might have been, if we had made different choices. You can still make different choices, starting now, starting here." On the fifth day, something remarkable happened. A young Dominion aide approached Marcus during a break in the negotiations. It was the same young Vordak who had been captured during the liberation of Kelvax Prime, the one who had asked why humans showed mercy. "I remember you," the aide said quietly. "You spared my life, you fed me, you sent me home." Marcus nodded. "I remember you too. I did not understand then. I thought it was a trick." The aide looked down at his feet. "But I have thought about it every day since, and I think I understand now." "What do you understand?" "That strength does not require cruelty, that power does not demand suffering, that we can be more than what we were taught to be." He looked up, his 4 eyes meeting Marcus's too. "I have been working with others who feel the same. We have been trying to change things from within. It is slow, it is dangerous, but I believe it is right." Marcus smiled. It was the same smile he had given the Kelvari boy in the market. "That takes courage, more courage than fighting ever did. I learned it from you, from all of you." The aide extended his hand in the human gesture of friendship. "Thank you." Marcus shook his hand. "Good luck, keep fighting the good fight." The aide nodded and returned to his delegation, but Marcus could see that something had changed in the room. The barriers were coming down, the walls were crumbling, and where there had been only suspicion, there was now, perhaps, the beginning of trust. On the seventh day, an agreement was reached. The Dominion would begin releasing slaves on a phased schedule. Human observers would monitor the process. In exchange, the Alliance would help the Dominion transition to a new economy, one not built on conquest. It was not perfect. It would take years to implement fully. There would be setbacks and disappointments. Some in the Dominion would resist the changes violently. Some in the Alliance would argue that the Dominion deserved no mercy. But it was a beginning, a crack in the old order, a ray of light in the darkness. When the agreement was signed, Colonel Park stood before the assembled delegates and spoke. Today, we take the first step toward a different future, a future where strength is measured not by what we take, but by what we give, a future where we lift each other up instead of pushing each other down, a future where every being in this galaxy can live in freedom and dignity. She paused, looking around the room at faces of a dozen different species. Humans did not win this war through force alone. We won because we held onto our values even when it was hard. We won because we showed mercy even when our enemies showed none. We won because we believe that kindness is not weakness, but the greatest strength of all. Some of you doubted us. Some of you fought against us. But today, I offer you the same thing we have offered every world we have touched, not domination but partnership, not submission but friendship. Together, we can build something better than any of us could build alone. She raised a glass, to peace, to freedom, to the future we will create together. The toast echoed through the chamber, and for the first time in a long while, the galaxy felt a little bit brighter. Years passed. The changes came slowly, as changes always do, but they came. The Dominion released its slaves, millions of beings returning to homes they had thought lost forever. Some Dominion worlds resisted, and there were conflicts, but they were small and contained. The old guard died off or were marginalized. The new generation, raised on stories of human mercy, built something new. The Galactic Alliance grew. Species that had once cowered in fear now stood tall and proud. Trade flourished. Art flourished. Science flourished. The galaxy was still not perfect, could never be perfect, but it was better. Measurably, undeniably better. Marcus Cole retired from the military and returned to Kelvax Prime. He opened a school there, teaching young Kelvari and human children together. He taught them mathematics and history and science, but mostly, he taught them kindness. The boy whose leg he had helped save grew up to become a doctor. He spent his life healing others, asking nothing in return, passing on the gift that a human soldier had given him so many years ago. Subcommander Tarn, the Dominion officer who had started the internal resistance, lived to see his efforts succeed. He died peacefully in his old age, surrounded by friends of many species. At his funeral, humans and Dominion officers stood side by side, honoring a being who had dared to believe in change. Admiral Wei's daughter grew up in a galaxy at peace. She became a diplomat, working to spread the values her father had defended. She kept the photo of herself on a beach, the same photo her father had touched before the Battle of Earth. It reminded her of what they were fighting for. And Colonel Diana Park, old now but still sharp, still fierce, gave one final speech before her retirement. She stood before a hall filled with beings from across the galaxy, species that had once been enemies now united in common purpose. When we started this journey, she said, many thought we were naive. They thought our compassion was foolishness. They thought our mercy was weakness. They said the universe was cruel and that we must be cruel to survive. She smiled. They were wrong. The universe is what we make of it, and we chose to make it kind. We chose to see the best in others, even when they showed us their worst. We chose to offer hope when others offered only despair. It was not easy. It was never easy. We lost friends. We made sacrifices. There were days when giving up seemed like the only option. But we didn't give up, because we knew that every time we showed mercy to an enemy, we planted a seed. Every time we helped a stranger, we built a bridge. Every time we chose kindness over cruelty, we made the universe a little bit better. She looked out at the assembly, at the proof of everything they had worked for. The Dominion called us weak for showing mercy. And yet where are they now? Changed, reformed. Our allies instead of our enemies. That is the power of compassion. That is the strength of kindness. That is what humanity brought to the stars. So to all of you, to all the species who have joined us, who have believed in us, who have helped us build this future, I say, thank you. Thank you for proving that we were right. Thank you for showing that mercy is not weakness. Thank you for being the change we hope to see. And to the generations who will come after us, who will inherit this galaxy we have built, I say, remember. Remember that kindness matters. Remember that compassion has power. Remember that the way you treat others, especially those who cannot fight back, defines who you really are. Be strong, be brave, be fierce when you must be, but never ever forget how to be gentle. She raised her hand in a final salute. That is the legacy of humanity. That is the gift we give to the stars. May it shine forever. The applause echoed through the hall and out into the vastness of space, where countless worlds spun in peace, where billions of beings lived in freedom, where the fire of human compassion had spread to every corner of the galaxy. And somewhere, watching from beyond the veil of stars, the universe itself seemed to smile. Because finally, after so many ages of darkness, someone had figured out the truth. Love was always the answer. It just took humanity to prove it.